Hey learners, Ben here, and today is a new day, so let's learn something new. In today's modern world, everyone seems to have a new idea, and because of cell phones and smartphones, it's a lot easier to just share those ideas with the world and create new art. Right? Art is great. Sort of, It's kind of up to you. But for every time there's a person that creates an idea, there's someone nearby that wants to just copy that idea. And the process of copying and creating isn't inherently bad. You do it all the time, especially, you go to school, which is essentially a long process, 12 years, 13 years of just copying what someone else already did. I mean, if you're at a good school, you'll have some process of creation for yourself. But largely the ideas are already pre-made. So why do we need copyright? If we just need to keep things to ourselves, why would we want to do that? Well, there's two main reasons. First is money. And if you know how to do something and do it well, why do it for free? We'll get into the money in a second. But let's look at the second reason, which is the progress of science and useful arts. Which is also money. It means money. Yeah, it's all about money. There's a lot of legal talk, but let's look at the basic history of copyright as it pertains to the U.S. Not because we're special or anything. It's just because I put the most research into that, and the little I did into international copyright was messy and full of ifs and buts, and only under these circumstances with these relationships, and it wasn't that great. And copyright itself wasn't really designed to go outside one's borders. It's largely a territorial concept. Territorial meaning that it only pertains to one's own territory or within your borders, which, it's your territory. That's what your border is, just an outline of what you say is yours. This land is my land. This land is also my land. I'm just going to take it. U.S. copyright law began right at the get-go with the U.S. Constitution. There were a few state constitutions made between the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution that settled copyright for certain states. But once we had the U.S. Constitution, we made sure to include it, quote, to promote the progress of science and useful arts for limited times, to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries, end quote. That's a lot of legal talk. We'll take a look at it and break it down. First off, progress. So progress implies a change. So if you're making something that was already made before, not only are you possibly breaking someone else's copyright, but you're not changing anything or making the world or the community a better place with your creation. And it's not inherently copyrightable, even though you made it. It's kind of generic, I guess is the word to use. Science and useful arts refers to the type of creation. So this is where you see a split between copyright and patents. Patents refer to scientific inventions or discoveries. So that's a whole separate issue, and it's actually, honestly, a lot easier to understand because you actually have a physical plan, detail, blueprint of most of these patents, and you have to give detailed descriptions of what everything is. Copyright covers things such as literary works, music, movies, artistic creations, sculptures, even architecture. These are all things that have no defined limit, which is why you'll sometimes see a lot of stories about musicians that are infringing on the copyright of other musicians because their songs are too similar. That's just how it is. There's only so many notes that the human ear can hear, and there's only so many ways that you can arrange those notes in a way that is original. Now, over the last 2 centuries, the terms limited times and exclusive rights have changed a little bit or been further defined. Copyright lasts for the author's life plus 70 years. All right, that is the latest iteration. It could always change again in the future, but then you're kind of infringing upon the very nature of the Constitution, which says a limited time. We can't just keep adding on years to this, but that's a topic for discussion. There is a notable exception to this rule, which is music that was composed or written before 1923 is generally considered public domain or free of copyright. The exclusive rights tied to an author or creator. You have the right to, number one, reproduce that work. You have the right to make as many copies as you want of your creation. It's up to you. Number two, you have the right to create derivative works. A derivative work, it's just a big word that means a work based on another work. If I write a book and then I make a movie based on that book, I'm allowed to. Someone else is not allowed to make a version of my story without my permission. Those would be derivative works. Number three, to distribute. I have the right as a creator to sell or even just give away my work. It's up to me. 4 and 5 kind of fall under the same umbrella. You have the right to publicly perform and to publicly display your work, so long as you don't break any other laws in the process, like indecency or disturbing the peace. Just because you wrote the song doesn't mean that you can go out and play it as loud as you want in the middle of an apartment complex. Number 6, the last one, to digitally transmit. It is arguably the newest one, although you could say that people used to sing over the telephone and that would be a digital transmission of a work, although, old phones are technically analog. And you have the right as a creator to send out as many digital copies as you'd like of that work. Anyone who performs any of the above, either one or a combination thereof, is probably infringing upon the copyright of the original creator. And you may be subject to a huge fine based on the number of infringements, or even jail time if you can't pay it. I say maybe because of one of the biggest 2-word phrases that any YouTuber probably knows, or anyone on a creation platform. Fair use is a big maybe in copyright law, and it's something that we'll have to dig deeper into in another video. So now that we've got the basic history and the exclusive rights and the limited times down, let's look at some of the finer details of copyright. Now, let's say that you created something and you want to be able to prove your ownership of that creation. Well, you don't have to register it. The moment something is created, it is already under protection of copyright law. So you're good on that. But any measures you take to prove your ownership, just make it easier. There are some things that you cannot copyright, like facts, systems, or methods. Facts are knowledge in its purest form, and they are inherently true, so there is no way that a human being has the right to own a fact. Facts include things like your name, scientific facts, your birthday. Those are things that are just true by nature. A system or a method are kind of the same thing. They're basically just ways in which something is done or created. Just because you know how to use a microwave a certain way that is super efficient and makes your food really hot really quick doesn't make it yours. It's just a process, and it's not something that you can copyright. The biggest thing with copyright is that it has to be physical and tangible, which means it must exist in either a written form or as a painting or as a notes on music sheets. They have to exist in such a way. Now, one thing you can do with facts, systems, or methods is create a book or a movie based on those and give your opinion on them, or just analyze them, and that itself would be copyrightable, but the actual idea still remains uncopyrightable. So just because there's a million people giving out different versions of weight loss ideas does not make each one of those weight loss ideas copyrightable. They all inherently say the same thing anyways, which is diet and exercise. All right. So as you can see, copyright can get kind of messy, but there is a lot of detail in there. And generally, if it's not yours, if it's not something that you made, it probably belongs to someone else. So you should cite your sources always. There are some interesting things to note. For example, did you know that dance moves are not copyrightable? Once again, because they're not actually physical. Even if you write it down, those dance moves, those dabs, aren't exactly copyrightable. I just dated this video by saying dabs. But whatever, right? So lately, Disney's been making a lot of live action remakes of their old stories. By making these remakes, do you think that the copyright on those stories, which are stories written ages ago, do you think that Disney's copyright on those stories has been extended? Let me know your answer below in the comments, and I guess you learned something new today. See you next time.